How China's $285 million export hub in Brazil will cost US billions. This export terminal stands as one of the largest in the world outside of China. It's being developed in Brazil, just outside São Paulo, by the Chinese state-owned agricultural giant, COFCO. With an investment of $285 million, this project could cost American farmers billions of dollars in lost revenue. Here's why. China-Brazil trade. Over the past decade, Beijing has spent hundreds of billions on American agricultural goods, making China one of the biggest markets for US farmers. Donald, we'll be discussing trade. In 2018, Washington imposed the first round of tariffs on China, and Beijing struck back with retaliatory tariffs. Although trade briefly dipped, China's appetite for American agricultural products quickly rebounded, and even surged in the years that followed. But that initial trade war fallout drove Beijing to look for alternative suppliers. Rich in beef, raw materials, and crops, Brazil rapidly rose to become China's #1 food supplier, surpassing the United States. By 2023, Brazilian agricultural exports to China hit a record $60 billion. And with this new terminal in southeastern Brazil, that partnership is about to become even more profitable. Port of Santos. In 2024, the Port of Santos handled a record 180 million tons of cargo, over half of which were agricultural products like corn, sugar, and Brazil's crown jewel, soybeans. Brazil's soybean exports alone are worth over $50 billion, and nearly 30% of that trade flows through Santos, primarily destined for China. But the port is bursting at the seams. According to logistics firm Macroinfra, over 90% of its agricultural export capacity is already in use. This is why COFCO is constructing its export terminal here. The goal? Expand export capacity from 4.5 million tons to 14 million tons, unlocking billions more in revenue. Trump's tariffs and U.S. farmers' losses. In the U.S., farmers fear this expansion will deepen their losses. The first trade war under Trump resulted in more than $27 billion in lost agricultural exports, according to USDA research. Donald, we have $1 trillion trade deficit with China. Hundreds of billions a year we lose, and unless we fix that, I'm not making a deal. Since Trump's return to office, China is again feeling the heat, and American farmers are paying the price. April's export data revealed China is slashing purchases of U.S. soybeans and planning to import less pork in 2025. While Trump is pushing Beijing to quadruple its soybean imports to reduce the trade deficit, the new port will allow China to further reduce its reliance on the U.S. market. Other Chinese projects in Brazil. The Santos port expansion aligns with Beijing's broader strategy to tap into South America's vast agricultural wealth, as China struggles with limited arable land and water shortages. Chinese firms are laying hundreds of miles of railway across Brazil's farming heartland and even planning a $3.5 billion megaport in Peru, connected by a nearly 3,000-mile transcontinental railway. This ambitious project, still in its early stages, could cut export times to Asia by up to 10 days, according to Chinese state media. But while these ventures promise billions in revenue, they also pose a threat. The risk of deindustrialization. Brazil is now facing one of the fastest deindustrialization rates in the world. As exports of raw materials to China soar, manufactured goods from China flood Brazilian markets, devastating local factories, costing jobs, and shrinking manufacturing's share of Brazil's GDP. The Santos terminal risks deepening this economic imbalance. What's next? For a while, Brazil seemed like the unexpected winner of Trump's trade war, boosting exports to both the US and China during their dispute. But the tides have turned. Recently, Trump imposed a 50% tariff on many Brazilian goods, one of the highest globally. This move is partially tied to a criminal case against former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro, accused of plotting a coup in 2022. A close ally of Trump, Bolsonaro has been defended by the former U.S. president, who called the case a witch hunt against Brazil's right wing. Brazilian officials see the tariffs as a pressure tactic to influence the judiciary, but they've made it clear they will not bow. China is already Brazil's largest trading partner, but with rising US tariffs and COFCO's new terminal coming online, this alliance is set to grow even stronger, potentially reshaping global agricultural trade for years to come.